Welcome in to the Rock Talk Studio, where I find you that next great rock and roll book or documentary to check out. This is the podcast that reviews, previews, and most importantly, recommends to you the good stuff. I'm your host, Big Rick. Let's plug in. And today, the spotlight falls on the new book, The Cars, Let the Stories Be Told by Bill Janovitz. And I don't know if this book would have really worked for me if not for the contributions of the three surviving members, guitarist Elliot Easton, David Robinson, the drummer, and keyboardist Greg Hawkes. All three of them provided a really deep insight and what I felt was a very honest look at what went on with the Cars. It's been over 35 years or so since they broke up, and it seems that time has given the three members plenty of opportunity to reflect, and it really shows in the way they speak about the band with, I think if you step back, I would say gratitude is a word that sums it up the best. But I would also say there's another word or words I would use, and that is lingering tension. Definitely, especially when it comes to the two main players in this story, bassist and singer Benjamin Orr, and the leader and the guy who wrote all those songs, Rick Ocasek. And give all the credit here to the writer of the book, Bill Janovitz, for getting access and building trust with these three surviving members so we could put together such a deep exploration of this band. 460 pages of exploration. It's a long one, but with Janovitz at the wheel, you get a good one. Janovitz is hot off his last release, a must-read if you haven't picked this one up. If you tune into the show, you've heard me talk about it before. It's the Leon Russell book, The Master of Space and Time's Journey Through Rock and Roll History. And Janovitz does the same thing he did with that Leon Russell story that he does here, and that is he leaves very, if any, rocks unturned to tell this story. Keyboardist Greg Hawkes even professes in the foreword that he learned things about the Cars that he never knew before. Another key to this presentation was access to the Cars, for lack of a better word, inner circle. You've got Ocasek's ex, Paulina Porskova. She has a lot to say here, as did a couple of the other band members' exes. You've also got some nice insight from WBCN's Maxine Sartori, who pretty much broke them when she started playing Just What I Needed before anyone else heard it. She has a lot to do with their early success, and I really like the way Janovitz explored that and highlighted these people. And speaking of that early success, the first 120 pages or so take a great look at what Ocasek and Orr, friends from very early on, what they went through to come up with their musical identity, and that is really deeply explored. It's a very rich and detailed telling of how hard they struggled and how far away from success they really were. And once it came together with Orr and Ocasek finding the other members of the band, it happened really fast. I mean, they went from nothing to something very quickly. They recorded their first album just over a year after the band played their first show. And going back and listening to that first album, which I usually do when I read a book, that was a greatest hits record. That first Cars album is incredible. And the book does a really good job of pointing this out, that once they came together, all the pieces, all those five members, once they locked in, they were there. That was it. That was the band. They were the Cars, and they had this unique sound that propelled them throughout their career. And I think Janovitz, being a musician himself, he is the member of the alt-rock group Buffalo Tom. I think it really makes it easy for him to go deep and dissect the songs, especially on the first couple of records. He really digs into dissecting these songs. His musician insight here will give gearheads and people who are really interesting into what chords were being played or the studio equipment or the recording equipment or the instruments being used, a real buzz here. There's a lot to sink your teeth in if you're into that. His musician's perspective, not only on the music, but also to the cultural impact the band had, to me, that was a real plus here with this book. Once the band makes it big, the story takes a bit more rock bio typical turn. And with the pressure on, Ocasek and Ben Orr really become the focus of the book. And Janovitz doesn't shy away from the significant conflicts within the group or the reasons for the band's end. The support from Ocasek's wife really gives you an inside look. Well, I mean, as much as Ocasek would give anyone, he was a very private guy and very kind of a quirky personality. And you got to see towards the end of their run how the personality conflicts really splintered the band and what happened and why they decided to break up. The book kind of reminds me about when I first saw the Cars. I think it was their second album, and it was a good show. I mean, they were really popular. They had a lot of great songs. They were a hot band at the time, but they're not a flashy band. They weren't known for a lot of stage theatrics and not a lot of jumping around. They just stood there and delivered the songs, and that's kind of like this book. It's not flashy. There's not a lot of over-the-top, jaw-dropping things going on here, but it's a very well-structured tale about a really cool band. Janovitz knows how to pace the immense amount of detail into this narrative and leaves you with a book that, like the band, is solid in its material. The Cars, Let the Stories Be Told is 459 pages, and it's written by one of my favorite rock and roll writers these days, Bill Janovitz. And after putting this book down, one big question popped into my head. You know, I like to do one big questions and look at something that stands out. I gave some thought to it, and I think this is something to think about with this book. So let's take a look at that one big question coming up next. Okay, let's take a look at this week's one big question about the Cars book, Let the Stories Be Told. And I referenced it in the review, and that's the Leon Russell book. So you got to ask yourself, is this book as good as the Leon Russell book? And the answer is no, it's not. Absolutely not. Not in any way. But hold on, before you take that Cars book out of your shopping cart, I'm not saying that you shouldn't get it because I would recommend this Cars book. Really what it comes down to, it's just vastly different because of one main reason, and that is Leon Russell. It's really the subject matter. Leon Russell was a very interesting guy, and that book has got a lot of great, crazy, wild rock and roll tales. It covers so much ground and it includes so many different artists. Leon was eccentric. He was quirky. He was a genius in a lot of ways. He went through a lot of ups and downs in his life. And the Cars book just doesn't have that. It's not that kind of a story. It's a well-researched and well-looked-at piece on a very interesting band, but it's not like that crazy, wild Leon Russell story. So here's what I suggest. You know what I'm going to say. Pick them both up. They're both good. They're both very, very worth it. Before I wrap up today's show, I've got some news about some new projects that I want to talk about. The projects are from Robbie Robertson, Pearl Jam, Oasis, Patti Smith, and Paul McCartney, to name a few. And then I'm going to tell you about next week's show, about a documentary that I thought I would never see. As we head into the end of the year, it's very common for publishers and entertainment companies to put out a lot of product for the end of the year. And that's what's coming up here in the next couple of months. As I mentioned, Oasis, new Oasis book, a new Patti Smith book, a Pearl Jam book, Robbie Robertson book, an Ozzy Osbourne documentary. There's a lot of stuff coming out, and I want to keep you on top of that. I can't do it every week with the show, so I have something that's an extension of this show. And I encourage you to take a look if you want the news about new rock and roll books and documentaries. And that is my newsletter. It comes out once a month, the last Friday of the month. And one of the best things about it, it's absolutely free right now. My subscriptions are free, and it'll give you all you need to know about the world of rock and roll books and documentaries. If you want to subscribe, all you've got to do is look in the show notes to this episode, scroll down a little bit. There's a place that says subscribe here, hit the button, and I'll hook you up. Okay, next week, I'll be building a mystery with a ton of great female musician talent. This is a documentary you don't want to miss. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love talking rock and roll with you. If you're a first-time listener, if this is the first time you listen to the show, I want to welcome you in and say thank you. This is what you're going to get every Tuesday. I do my best to find you some great rock and roll books and documentaries to sink your teeth into. And if you're a long-time listener, much love and respect. You know I am so grateful to have you along for the ride here, and so grateful to communicate and talk with a lot of you about rock and roll books and documentaries. All right, let's tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. I'll see you next time in the Rock Talk studio.